did you just say?
I couldn't help but be shocked. A luxurious restaurant in a high-end hotel. The table was adorned with sumptuous dishes, symbolizing the importance of this special day. Sitting across from me was Brandon, the father of my daughter's fiancé, with a malicious grin on his face.
Sarah grew up in a single-mother household, and she didn't even go to college, right? She must have had a tough time. Like maybe delivering newspapers early in the morning to pay for her tuition.
Or perhaps the nightlife industry? At first, his words seemed to express concern about Sarah's single-mother upbringing. However, they quickly turned into something mocking. I wanted to believe I had misheard. Today was a family meeting with my daughter, Sarah's fiancé, Nicholas, and his parents. It was an important occasion where we were supposed to become one family, yet the words spoken were incredibly insulting. Being directly or indirectly mocked for being a single mother was something I had sadly grown accustomed to. But this time, the setting made it even more intolerable.
Is that so? You must have had a hard time.
Miranda, Brandon's wife, sitting next to him, said something unbelievably condescending, as if she truly pitied me from the bottom of her heart. What is wrong with these people? Their behavior was beyond rude. Sarah had told me a bit about Nicholas's parents beforehand. Brandon, a well-known lawyer, famous not only for his skills, but also for the many bad rumors surrounding him. And his wife Miranda, a daughter from an upper-class family who married the son of a lawyer. I had heard she was kind, but judging by her current behavior, she seemed extremely naive.
Dad. Mom, how can you say that to Sarah and Jessica? It's disrespectful.
Nicholas, sitting next to Sarah, tried to soften the situation. He finally got over the shock of Brandon's abusive remarks and turned red with anger. Sarah had told me that Nicholas was gentle and rarely raised his voice. As Sarah said, he seemed like a kind person, and I found myself nodding calmly despite the unexpected turn of events.
What's disrespectful?
Miranda, seemingly not understanding Brandon's sarcasm, looked puzzled. Brandon, on the other hand, had a mocking attitude, as if to say, "You inexperienced fool.
What's wrong with speaking the truth? I've seen many people from single-mother and single-father households. Many of them ended up committing crimes and came crying to their families. What?"
My vision gradually turned red. Being mocked for being a single mother was one thing. But to insinuate that we had lived our lives doing something shameful or criminal was something I could not tolerate. And apparently, Sarah felt the same way.
Sure, I didn't go to college, but now I work at the same law firm as Nicholas, and I'm an international lawyer. Haven't you heard that from Nicholas? What?
Now it was Brandon's turn to be at a loss for words. I felt a bad sense of satisfaction. But
someone like you couldn't possibly become an international lawyer. Don't lie. Have some shame, shame on you.
Brandon, his face turning as red as it could get, berated Sarah. The atmosphere was no longer suitable for a family meeting, charged with anger. Sarah tried to respond forcefully, but Brandon spoke first.
How did you get that qualification anyway? Probably by offering sexual favors for business deals, right? Single mothers like you and your kind are all the same. Even your dead father, I bet he didn't die in a dignified way either.
I heard a sound, like something thick breaking inside me. It wasn't just my imagination. Otherwise, why would my vision be so red and wavering like water?
What do you know? Mom?
Sarah's worried voice broke through, noticing my change. She was regaining her composure. But it was too late to stop.
What do you even understand? My husband died helping others, standing up for his sense of justice. You know nothing about him, about us who loved him and his sense of right.
I am Jessica. I met my husband, Rodney, back when I was still a student. At that time, I was confident in my language skills and, being young, I traveled abroad alone. It was during a long summer break. I didn't join any tour groups, just wandered around tourist spots with a guidebook in hand. I knew there were dangerous areas, so I took all possible precautions against theft and pickpocketing. But I am a young person venturing out of a safe area for the first time. I was quickly targeted by a shady local man.
Hey there, beautiful. First time here? I know some beautiful spots not in the guidebook. Let me show you around. No, thank you. Please leave me alone.
Looking back, my foreign language skills were terrible. Suddenly, the man's speech sped up and became hard to understand. Even though it was just my unfamiliarity, it was probably normal speed for him. I responded awkwardly, with incorrect grammar. That likely made him think I was an easy target. Despite feeling chills, I tried to keep smiling, but he suddenly grabbed my arm.
No, let go! It's fine, there's a hotel nearby if you're tired.
What is he saying? I thought frantically, struggling to shake off his hand. But the difference in physical strength between men and women was evident. Moreover, he was quite well built. It wasn't easy to break free. I looked around for help, but even in a foreign land, it was the same. People passed by either ignoring us or seeing it as a minor squabble, offering no assistance. I felt helpless. I thought of my parents, who had been worried about my trip until the last moment. I felt sorry for them. I might never see them again. Just as I was about to give up.
Hey! There you are! Over here!
A male voice I didn't recognize. From his accent, he didn't sound like a local. Both I and the man holding my arm looked puzzled. Unfazed by the tense atmosphere, the man, likely from my own country, approached us with a smile.
Who the hell are you? Thank goodness I found you. She's my friend. I lost sight of her for a moment and got worried. Who are you?
Out of the frying pan into the fire. Speaking softly in my native language, I asked the stranger. Then the man also whispered. Trust me. He whispered back. Then he turned back to the other man, smiling, and gestured for him to release my hand.
I did try to warn her at first, but she has this troublesome habit of getting so engrossed in unusual things that she forgets her surroundings. It seems she couldn't control herself. You really helped us. Especially in a foreign land, where there's even rumors about people pretending to flirt only to engage in human trafficking.
The man's face tightened as if he realized this might be true. He then released my hand and hurried away, almost fleeing.
Did I get saved? Yes, it seems so.
As the man's figure disappeared, the previously smiling and composed man suddenly collapsed to the ground, drained of energy.
Hey, are you okay?
I had suspected him of being a shady character, but this sudden collapse made me forget all those thoughts. Peering into his face, I realized he had been putting on a brave front. Sweat trickled down his smiling, yet pained face.
I'm not doing so well, but
I'm glad it worked out somehow. His face showed genuine relief from the bottom of his heart. Seeing his soft expression relaxed me a bit and reminded me of something important.
Oh my. I didn't even thank you properly. I'm so sorry. And thank you. You saved me.
When I hastily expressed my gratitude, the man seemed a bit taken aback. It's really okay. Meeting people, even through small things, is fate. It's only natural to help someone in trouble. He stood up with a smile, lightly brushing the dirt off his pants. Helping someone in trouble is only natural. His calm words echoed in my mind. There are still people like this out there. People who help others in need without expecting anything in return. Just because they have a strong sense of justice. But really, be careful in this country. What I said earlier is not a lie. He was probably referring to the rumors about human trafficking disguised as flirting. Thinking back, I was indeed in a dangerous situation. If this man hadn't helped me. If that other man had taken more forceful measures. When I think about it, I and this man were truly lucky. Thinking about it made me tremble with fear. Well, I'll be going now. His voice snapped me back to reality. I didn't know why. But maybe I was already drawn to his sense of justice at that moment.
Wait, please!
I found myself calling out to him as he was about to leave. The man turned back with a curious look. I called out without thinking, but had no idea what to say next. Desperately trying to think, I finally said, "Please let me thank you properly. I just realized I didn't even ask your name." It sounded like a cheesy pickup line. But the man, without suspicion, just gave a wry smile and told me his name. My name isn't anything special, but it's Rodney. I'm just a solo traveler. This was how I met Rodney, who would later become my husband. After that incident in a foreign land, we exchanged contact information and, strangely enough, started dating soon after I returned home. Whenever our schedules allowed, we went on numerous dates. I soon realized that Rodney was a man of unyielding integrity and justice. During our dates, if he saw someone in need, even if it wasn't a person, he would rush to help regardless of our plans. For example, if he saw a lost child, he would stay with them until they were reunited with their parents, even if it took hours. Despite his fear of heights, he once climbed a tree to retrieve a baseball for some kids who had gotten it stuck. If he saw an injured stray cat, he would pick it up and rush it to the animal hospital without a second thought, not caring if he got blood on himself. He would take responsibility and care for it until he found it a new home. Honestly, sometimes, I felt a bit uneasy about his tendency to prioritize strangers over me. But that was just how he was, and it was one of the reasons I fell in love with him, so I chose to keep quiet. Time passed, we got married, and the following year, we had a child. Our daughter, Sarah, who had a gentle face just like him. Since Sarah was born, our daily life seemed to be filled with even more happiness. I had a loving husband, an adorable daughter. We weren't exactly wealthy, but we cherished our modest happiness, laughing together as a family. Those were days without any problems. However, those happy days came to an abrupt end. 5 years after Sarah was born, Rodney died at the young age of 31. It was a day I'll never forget. An unseasonal heavy rain was falling. Sarah and I stayed up, rubbing our sleepy eyes, waiting for Rodney, who was late coming home from work. The things Sarah and I talked about. I don't remember the details that much. I only remember the sound of the rain pounding down, and the sudden ringing of the phone informing me that Rodney had been taken to the hospital. With a sleepy Sarah, we finally made it to the hospital through the pouring rain, only to be greeted by Rodney, who was already cold. The doctor standing next to me calmly told me the cause of Rodney's death was drowning. In the midst of this heavy rain, he had jumped into the river to save a drowning boy, and only Rodney ended up losing his life. That was so typical of Rodney, I thought, as a strangely calm part of me noted. He saved someone, not thinking of himself, and ended up dying, a beloved and important hero.
Mommy, what's wrong?
Sarah, still looking sleepy, gazed up at me. I couldn't cry. I couldn't let myself cry in front of Sarah, who didn't understand what was happening. I desperately tried to hold back my tears. But,
Mommy, why is Daddy sleeping? Sarah, stop!
I instinctively stopped Sarah, who was trying to approach Rodney, and hugged her tightly. I didn't know why I did that myself. Mommy, it hurts, Sarah said from within my arms. But I didn't let go, holding her even tighter. As if to shield her from the reality of Rodney's death, I hugged her small body. Also, as if to shield myself from that same reality. That small, moving warmth. A sign of life. Unable to bear it, I silently let my tears flow. What followed were stormy days. I held Rodney's funeral, desperately, watching Sarah, who finally understood Rodney's death, sobbing. Someone claiming to represent the boy Rodney saved came to the funeral, but I don't remember much, being overwhelmed with arranging the funeral while feeling a deep sense of loss. Even after the funeral, peace did not return to us. With Rodney gone, we became a single-mother household. Fortunately, with the savings Rodney left us, the job I had before Sarah was born, and the support from many people who admired Rodney, we managed to get by. However, relying on that alone would eventually lead to running out of resources. Therefore, I decided to start working again once things had settled down a bit. I worked day and night, without regard to the time. As a result, I felt guilty, knowing that Sarah was likely feeling lonely. Yet, I couldn't afford to stop. Of course, there was the financial aspect, but more importantly, it was because of a promise I had made to Rodney one day.
Sarah should see the world. It might be difficult to do it the way I did, but I want her to see the world, to understand it. And one day, I hope she becomes a kind person who can help those in need.
These were Rodney's words, often repeated like a mantra during his lifetime. I wanted Sarah to see the world. I wanted her to experience many things. I didn't want her to give up on those experiences because of money. That was my only driving force. Sarah never complained to my face about it. Maybe she was being considerate in her own way. Her grades were always top-notch, so she wouldn't have to go to cram school. Teachers constantly suggested prestigious private schools, but she stubbornly chose public schools. She went through public middle and high schools, and then came the time to think about her next steps.
Mom, I have a favor to ask.
Sarah said this abruptly. Ever since Rodney passed away, Sarah had never made such a selfish request, possibly out of consideration. Her wish was to travel the world instead of going to college. She wanted to see the world and experience things that school and books couldn't teach, things that could only be understood on the ground. Even knowing her true feelings, I couldn't help but wonder why. As a parent, I wanted her to go to college without worrying about finances and to live a happy life. While I had those thoughts, I also questioned if going to college and living in a narrow world would truly make her happy. Was it right for a parent to crush the first selfish wish of a child who had endured so much until now? Could I, with my own ego, destroy the wishes and promises that Rodney had always spoken of during his life? The answer was, of course, no.
All right, go ahead.
Fortunately, I had saved enough money over the years to cover the travel expenses without needing to splurge. When I told her this, Sarah cried with joy and repeatedly promised to work and pay it back. But I refused, saying that after all the patience she had shown, she should allow me to do this much. And so, after graduating from high school, Sarah set off on her journey around the world. By coincidence, it seemed as if she mirrored Rodney's image from that day, something I hadn't shared with her. Every day, without fail, I received a message from Sarah, not only to let me know she was safe but also to share her experiences. There might have been issues with international signals, but it was likely she was also being mindful of communication costs. She had grown into such a considerate child. The messages varied slightly each day, usually consisting of text and photos from her travels. Sometimes, she expressed amazement at the crowds and high prices in major cities abroad, along with photos of skyscrapers she had never seen before. Other times, she shared how people helped her when she was struggling in a foreign country, along with heartwarming photos of her with those who had helped her. There were also times when she entered developing countries, where she was deeply moved by the locals' determination to live their lives despite their circumstances. She felt ashamed of herself for having given up on various things because of being from a single-parent household. With such messages, she sent beautiful photos of sunsets she had seen with the local people. One day, amidst the joyful yet humbling exchanges of messages, there was a note saying, "I'm coming back soon." It read, "Mom, I want to become an international lawyer. When I return, I will study law, go abroad, and get qualified as an international lawyer. I want to help people from many different countries." Sarah didn't know much about Rodney's sense of justice and desire to help others. It was one of the traits that attracted me to him and made me love him deeply. I never realized that Sarah had inherited this beautiful quality from him.
She truly grew up to be a kind person, just like you wished.
I reported Sarah's growth to Rodney's photo while showing him the message. In the photo, he seemed to have a bittersweet smile. And then, time passed again. When Sarah returned, she worked at a law firm while saving for exam fees and studying for her lawyer qualification. I offered to cover the exam fees, but she refused and insisted on achieving it on her own. Is this what it means for a child to become independent? While feeling proud of Sarah's growth, I also felt a tinge of loneliness. Although she declined financial support, I helped her in other ways, particularly in her daily life. I made her late-night snacks when she worked late and packed sandwiches for her lunch to save on food expenses. "You don't have to go through all this trouble," she said with a wry smile, but she accepted my help nonetheless. Years passed since the journey that changed Sarah, and she finally qualified as a lawyer and worked at a law firm. There, she gained more knowledge and experience, and eventually, with her boss's permission, went abroad. In a foreign land, she achieved her dream of becoming an international lawyer. She sent me this news when she turned 27. Since then, a lot has happened. Just like the day she told me she wanted to become an international lawyer. Along with the notification of her qualification, there was a photo of Sarah smiling. I showed the message to Rodney's photo.
"Sarah has grown into a kind person, just like you. She will help many people through law. There will be tough times and challenges. So please, watch over her from your side."
I thought of Rodney and made my wish. I had no idea then that a year later, Sarah would meet her future spouse at work and decide to get married. And that I would face such an insulting situation at that family meeting. I quickly recounted my memories and promises with my late husband, and proudly told them about our daughter who inherited his sense of justice and became an international lawyer. Suddenly, the room fell silent. Even the unpleasant parents of her partner, Nicholas, and Sarah herself froze in shock. I had done it. But, although I felt sorry for Sarah, I had no regrets. Rodney had helped a stranger boy selflessly and lost his life. My beloved, proud Rodney. I won't tolerate anyone mocking his life and the reason for his death, even if they are the parents of my daughter's spouse. Brandon's face turned red with anger. Next to him, Miranda paled and looked back and forth between Brandon and me. I braced myself for the worst words imaginable. It was at that moment when I resolved myself. It was Nicholas who broke the silence first, quite unexpectedly. With an expression of disbelief, Nicholas began to speak.
"That person could it be?
I was the next one to be surprised by what Nicholas said. He was completely right. Nicholas accurately captured Rodney's character from back then, and even knew the name of the hospital where Rodney had been taken.
Nicholas, how do you? So it was true.
Nicholas interpreted my words as confirmation, and his gentle expression contorted. It was a mixture of joy and regret, a kind of bittersweet smile. Then, suddenly, he apologized deeply. It was more than just an apology.
Nicholas? Nicholas! What are you doing?
Brandon, enraged, tried to make Nicholas stand up, but Nicholas brushed his arm away and apologized even more deeply.
Jessica and Sarah. Even though I didn't realize it, my parents were incredibly rude. Nicholas, you don't have to go that far. That's right. We understand your feelings, Nicholas.
Even though we urged him, Nicholas stubbornly refused like a child. No, my parents did something that terrible. Sarah. It might be hard to believe, and even I still can't believe it, but the boy your father saved was me when I was young. It was now our turn to be surprised by his words. This was Nicholas's story. At the time, he was severely bullied at school because of Brandon's bad reputation. On that day, he encountered bullies on his way back from tutoring, and they threw his important tutoring bag into the river. Trying not to worry his parents, he attempted to retrieve the bag by himself. However, young Nicholas slipped and fell into the river. The river, swollen with rain, had a swift current, making it impossible for him to return to the shore on his own. In that situation, Rodney dived into the river to save him, without any regard for his own safety. Rodney first brought Nicholas to the shore, then jumped back into the river to retrieve the bag that had been swept away. Just because Nicholas was in trouble. And as a result, Rodney died. Nicholas knew the name of the hospital where Rodney was taken because his worried housekeeper, who came to pick him up, had called it in. Nicholas was also taken to the same hospital by the paramedics as a precaution. Later, young Nicholas, upon hearing from the nurses that his savior had died, tried to apologize to our family immediately. However, he was prevented by Brandon, who was a renowned lawyer at the time. If it became known that the son of a famous lawyer was bullied and caused someone's death, it would damage his reputation. For such conservative reasons, he left the apology to his representative. Nicholas deeply regretted it. If he hadn't jumped into the river, if he had been more responsible, if he had been a person of justice. Since that day, Nicholas swore to become a lawyer who could help others as much as possible, just like Brandon, but never like Brandon, who was drowned in power. A different kind of silence enveloped the room. Nicholas, filled with rage, remained utterly silent, as if he had become a completely different person. Then, in the next moment, he did something unexpected. He offered a deep apology. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were Nicholas' benefactor. I spoke out of turn." Neither Sarah nor I could say anything. I couldn't fully grasp Sarah's feelings. She simply stared quietly at the family she could consider her father's enemy. As for me, I was on the verge of exploding with anger. I thought, why apologize now? If he was going to apologize, why didn't he come to apologize the moment Rodney passed away? I was convinced that this apology wasn't sincere. However, it was Sarah who spoke first. "Both of you, please stop." Her voice was surprisingly calm and gentle. It wasn't just me who was taken aback by this. Both of them also wore expressions of shock. Sarah continued. "Indeed, it's hard not to feel that apologizing now is too late. Brandon, as a fellow lawyer and as a person, I find it difficult to forgive you for not coming to apologize immediately. Brandon's face flushed red again. But, perhaps realizing he stood no chance, he only let out a small groan. Sarah continued to address him.
I'm sure my father would say this. He'd say he was just glad that the boy from that time is safe. That's all that matters.
Then, crouching in front of Nicholas, who was still kneeling, Sarah spoke with a tearful, bittersweet smile.
My father saved you, and you've carried on his sense of justice. I know this because I've watched you in the office all these years. So, Nicholas, who has carried on my father's will, please marry me.
Are you sure?
Yes, that is an unchangeable fact. But it's also true that you've inherited my father's sense of justice.
Tears streamed down Nicholas' cheeks. Then, grasping Sarah's hands tightly, he said in a voice full of emotion.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll make sure to make you happy.
As Nicholas finally broke down in tears, Sarah gently embraced him. Seeing such a tender moment between the two of them, the anger and resentment within me began to melt away gently. When I looked over at Brandon, he had an awkward expression and was looking away. Perhaps, in his own way, this was his way of acknowledging Sarah and Nicholas's marriage. Was it all right to feel relieved about this? I'm sure Rodney would have said it was. Thinking this, I sent my silent blessings to Nicholas, who was sobbing, and Sarah, who was gently comforting him. At the end of such an eventful day, with the world bathed in the colors of sunset, Sarah, Nicholas, and I found ourselves at a certain place. Rodney's resting place, the cemetery.
I am deeply sorry that I couldn't come to thank you back then because I went against my father's wishes. Although it's late, it's thanks to you that I am here now.
Thank you very much. He said his gratitude. Sarah also spoke to the grave.
Dad, I still feel lonely without you, but thank you for saving Nicholas that day.
Then she laid the bouquet of flowers she had been holding. Today, since it was mainly about Sarah and Nicholas's report, I stood quietly in the background.
Although it might be too much to say I'll do as much as you did, I promise here and now to help those in need and to protect Sarah from now on. So Dad, please watch over us from the sky. I will also do my best to help as many people in need as you and Nicholas.
The two of them made their vows in front of Rodney's grave. My daughter, who had grown strong over time, and the young man who had inherited Rodney's sense of justice. Rodney, are you seeing this? The things you did were never in vain. Even though you are gone, your will lives on and is being carried forward. Feeling the joy in my heart, I shed tears for the first time since that funeral day.